Who's on the rise and who's falling down? Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, January 8th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have ADP risers and fallers throughout December. Why are they rising or falling? We'll try and figure out the reasons this is happening. And are we buying at the new cost? Plus, we do have some news. Future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander has signed with the Giants. Does it matter? Probably not, but we'll talk about it anyway. Let's jump right in with one of the biggest risers over the past month. And this is using 98 NFBC drafts in November and then 126 NFBC drafts in December. So the sample size is slowly getting bigger. Still, things will change. And in fact, they are already changing. And that's why we're seeing some big risers and fallers. And one of the biggest risers was Trevor Megill, reliever from the Brewers. And the reason here is pretty obvious. Devin Williams traded over to the New York Yankees, and it feels like Trevor Megill will just kind of slot right in as the closer. He did a great job in the first half of last season, filling in for Devin Williams. But the ADP, if you look specifically from when the trade went down, was December 13th. So from December 14th on, 121.9, the 14th reliever off the board. 7 picks after Lucas Erceg, 20 picks after Ryan Walker. Scott, buy or sell at this cost, Trevor Megill?
So he's going after Erceg, after Walker.
Just ahead of Kirby Yates and Alexis Diaz.
Well, okay, I'm trying to align that with my own rankings because I have Alexis Diaz much, much lower than that. Probably Lucas Erceg a little lower than that too. But Ryan Walker, if we're just comparing Trevor Megill to where he ranks against Ryan Walker, I guess I'm satisfied with that. I myself slotted. Oh, you know what? I actually do have him behind Erceg. I have Trevor Megill 15th in my relief pitcher rankings. So I have him a little behind Kirby Yates, who I assume will be signing as a closer. Free agents tend to have their value suppressed in these NFBC drafts until they sign. It kind of makes sense for somebody whose role is so tied to his value like Kirby Yates, but I expect Kirby Yates to sign as a closer somewhere, and that's how I rank him. Megill, Erceg, that seems like a pretty close comp because neither is especially proven in the role. You could argue, actually, that Megill's a little more proven. In fact, didn't he make No, he didn't make the All-Star team. I kind of thought he did, but no, he didn't. Yeah, I think he'll be a fine closer. He was for the first half of last year, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. If you think a guy's going to get saves, if you think he's good enough to hold up in the role, if you think he's pitching for a team that's going to be winning enough games to give him a good saves total, that's really all that goes into the assessment for closers. And I think Megill, there's not much doubt who stands to step into that role for Milwaukee.
Who do you think has more competition, Megill or Walker? Walker does have a proven closer on his own team. It's just someone that they went away from last year. Mm-hmm. But Megill has some really talented arms in the bullpen as well. It's just he was used ahead of Yoel Payamps last year, so we're assuming the same thing will happen this year.
Do you consider Yoel Payamps to be really talented? He's a fine reliever.
Talent. I don't know if talented is the right word, but a career 3.04 ERA over 240 innings. I know he doesn't get that many strikeouts, but he's really good, I think.
Yeah, I guess I would say, I would say Megill has more job security than Walker because they were without Devin Williams for half the season last year, and they didn't go to him immediately, but they went to him pretty soon and stuck with him, and he did fine. And Payamps, I don't think, is a closer caliber reliever. But we know Camilo Doval, of course, is.
Yeah, that's. I'm not 100% sure Ryan Walker's the best reliever in his own bullpen.
But even so, it would take It would take both Ryan Walker faltering and Camilo Doval getting back to being the guy we knew prior to 2024 for a change to happen. I think as long as both guys, Megill and Walker, do what they're supposed to do, they'll just be the closer all year.
Yeah, and Ryan Walker is actually someone who's risen over the past month as well. His ADP in November was 114, and then in December 102. So up about a round is Ryan Walker. And I think every day that goes by that the Giants don't sign a reliever, and personally, I don't really think that they will, I think that just gives you a little bit more confidence in someone like Ryan Walker. Chris, I guess to throw your question back at you, who would you rather have between Trevor Megill and Ryan Walker?
I have Megill 3 spots higher in my RP rankings overall. Very similar in the overall rankings. They're separated by 8 spots overall. And so it's not really a strong take there.
I should clarify, because I said Megill probably has more job security. I do rank Walker higher just because I think Ryan Walker's better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not a big enough gap in job security that I'm going to have that be the reasoning rather than just how good I think the guy is.
I will say I have Kirby Yates ahead of them both. And this is what I'm struggling with. I do have Lucas Erceg ahead. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that one. I think he's super talented. And so I don't know but that's a very similar range, I think.
I think Lucas Erceg is really good as well, but it kind of felt like the Royals wanted to give Hunter Harvey a shot last year too. And then he got hurt and he's had trouble staying healthy in his career. Mm-hmm. But I would say of the 3, Erceg, Walker, and Megill, I probably feel the least confident in Lucas Erceg's job security.
Like I said, he's the least proven in the role.
Yeah, but he's good. I think he's a talented reliever. Like, there's no doubt about that.
I do have like those 3 in a tier along with Alexis Diaz, whatever. Yeah, and then Pete Fairbanks, who I think on a different team with less injury concerns, I think Pete Fairbanks might be a top 10 closer. I'm not 100% sure what to make of it, but I have Kirby Yates a tier ahead.
And I'm no longer confident Fairbanks is the best reliever in his bullpen either, in addition to him showing no ability to stay healthy. So that's a different, they're both far down the like Alexis Diaz is one of my last ranked relievers who is currently slotted to close for his team.
Yeah. Fairbanks feels like a pretty obvious avoid just for now, just because the Rays have been trying to trade him for, it feels like over a year now, and he can't stay healthy and he might not be the best reliever in his bullpen. So yeah, I totally agree. I think Fairbanks should be a little bit lower down this list. A notable faller over the past month, Ronald Acuña. And this one is pretty obvious. He fell from pick 20 in November to 26 in December. And that might not sound like a lot, but moving 6 spots that early in the draft, I mean, you go from a second to a 3rd round pick in a 12-team league. I think that's pretty notable. And the reason, Braves president of baseball operations, Alex Anthopoulos, reiterated in November that both Acuña and Strider will not be ready for opening day. We don't know exactly when they're going to be back, but Ronald Acuña coming back from a second torn ACL in his other knee. So now both knees have been reconstructed. Chris, what do you think here? Buy or sell at the cost of pick 26-ish for Ronald Acuña?
It's so hard to say where Ronald Acuña should be ranked, because the answer right now, if you're drafting on January 8th, is very different than in March 22nd or whenever most drafts are going to happen, because presumably we will have a lot more clarity about what not ready for opening day means. Because I'm blanking on the name of the Braves beat writer, David O'Brien. I think he has said that like Ronald Acuña might miss the first 2 months of the season upwards. Like that's been bandied about. And so I haven't seen like that sourced to a team personnel.
Yeah, I haven't seen that at all.
It's possible. It seems
doubting
like
it.
That sounds unreasonable, but
it sounds speculative on his part if he did offer that. And I know sometimes it's hard to interpret whose voice a beat writer is using when they say something. I'm a little surprised Acuña is. I have him 28th, so I guess I am in line with how he's fallen. But it's just kind of funny, I guess, that he had this torn ACL, which again is in the opposite knee, so it's not like it's the same surgery happening twice in the same body part. But he had it a month earlier than the other one. And when he was coming back from that first torn ACL, by the end of draft season, I think he was pushed back into round 1. And so he's going significantly later, even though he should be further along in his recovery from the second surgery. And I just find that interesting. Obviously you shouldn't be drafting right now. I know some degenerates out there are. It's a very small number.
Jeez, God.
Listen.
Throwing around the D word.
He calls him
I am. But I suspect.
Chris is drafted.
I've drafted.
What Chris says is absolutely right. Have you drafted a real? You are a degenerate if you drafted a real team.
I've drafted one real team so far.
You're playing in dozens of leagues if you're drafting teams now.
I do want to clarify. It was Mark Bowman of MLB.com.
Okay.
This was a report from looks like about a month ago, and I'll read it in full. The current projected opening day outfield would be Michael Harris, a second in center, Jared Kelenic in left, and Eli White / Carlos Rodriguez / write-in candidate in right. So there is an obvious need for at least one outfielder to account for Acuña's absence through most of the first third of the season.
Most of the
way that's written is extremely vague and
a huge amount of hedging going on there.
So I don't know.
We'll know more by the time people are drafting for real.
I would say right now, buy. I expect Ronald Acuña to be better than he was last year when he's on the field, and I would take the under on a May 1st debut. Like he debuts before that. That was a confusing way to put it, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. A buy there for Chris on Ronald Acuña. Before we take our first break, just a reminder that FBT is a finalist for Best Baseball Podcast in the Sports Podcast Awards, and the winner will be determined by a fan vote. So we need your help. Scan the QR code if you're watching on YouTube, or click on the link in the episode description. Click that thumbs up once you get to the webpage for FBT, punch in your info, and it's easy as that. Help us bring home the hardware. Voting ends January 13th, next week, so get those votes in now. We really do appreciate it. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll talk some news and notes, and then back into Risers and Fallers right after this.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Welcome back in news and notes. The old man, he's not done yet. Justin Verlander is signing a 1-year, $15 million deal with the San Francisco Giants. Verlander will be 42 years old on opening day. Not really sure how much he has left. He was limited to 17 starts last season. And once he returned from the IL in the second half, he was pretty awful. Chris, your thoughts, Justin Verlander to the Giants?
I think the chances of him ever being an impact player again are pretty limited, but as far as landing spots go, this is about as good as you could have hoped for. Very good home park to play in. Should be a decent defensive team, especially along the infield. And for as finished as Justin Verlander looked, and I've seen a lot of jokes going around social media of like Justin Verlander on the Giants, and then it's like a picture of Patrick Ewing in like an Orlando Magic jersey.
Yeah.
Or Sammy Sosa on the Orioles or whatever.
I saw Shaquille O'Neal in a Celtics jersey.
That already happened. Like that part of Justin Verlander's career has already begun. He got left off the playoff roster last year. Like it's hard for things to get lower than that. And I will point out 5.48 ERA, FIP, and all that stuff was terrible. 3.78 xERA. He actually did limit hard contact well enough.
Before he got hurt last season, he had a 3.95 ERA.
He was okay. It's just the whiff rates on all of his pitches have completely disappeared.
Yeah.
So, like, I think the best case scenario you're hoping for here is a, I don't know, Chris Bassett impersonation where he's just good enough that he doesn't hurt you.
Even then, like, even if he's as good as Chris Bassett on a per game basis, which I think the odds are pretty long, he's not going to give you that kind of volume in all likelihood. He is aging, and I think it's revealing that he only signed with the Giants, a team that's not a surefire contender, not one with, I would say, serious World Series aspirations, when the only reason Justin Verlander is pitching is for competition's sake. You know, he's made his millions. He's stamped his ticket for Cooperstown. He just enjoys the competition of it. And that he'd sign with a team that a 1-year deal with the team like the Giants tells me he wasn't getting comparable offers from the teams that would more likely bring him to the World Series.
So probably not worth drafting in a standard mixed league, right?
I think he'll be drafted in like half of CBS Sports leagues, and he'll be like a streamer even in those.
I have a hard time seeing him in any points league, given how shallow those are.
It is a perfect ballpark. You mentioned that, Chris. Just wanted to reiterate, Oracle Park over the past 3 years has the worst home run factor for hitters. So obviously that's a great thing for a pitcher, especially a fly ball pitcher like Justin Verlander. So maybe he can squeak out some value, but not really worth drafting in a standard mixed league. The updated Giants rotation, by the way, Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, and Justin Verlander. It feels solid. I don't want to say good, but it feels okay. So we'll see what they can do. Brent Rooker and the A's have agreed on a 5-year, $60 million extension, and Rooker had an incredible season last year. He hit 293, 39 home runs, 112 RBI, 11 steals, and a 927 OPS. He finished as the 15th overall player, and looks like he's getting a park upgrade too, going from Oakland Coliseum to Sutter Health Park in Sacramento. He did have surgery to clean up a forearm extensor injury, but Scott, looks like Brent Rooker is sticking around with the A's for the foreseeable future. His ADP in 3 January drafts is 76.7, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it does sound pretty good. And I think his DH only status helps a lot with that, because we always see the draft stock suppressed for those players beyond what's reasonable. And it's less sensible in the case of Brent Rooker, because we expect him to regain outfield eligibility in short order. The A's have talked about him playing more outfield this year. I think, wasn't there some kind of health issue that prevented him from doing it last year? Yeah.
Yeah. He played I think 5 or 6 games in the first month plus of the season, and then just didn't play the outfield at all. So even if he's not like a full-time outfielder, if they just used him the way they did last year, he should get outfield eligibility relatively soon.
Before the end of April, yeah. So the other wrinkle, of course, is that he's kind of a one-hit wonder. He was solid in 2023 as well, but he wasn't across the boards must-start kind of stud. And yeah, you look at his StatCast page, and there's a lot of red on it. Of course, that itself can sometimes be a mirage. But I think for the cost, there's not a lot of reason to harbor concerns about Brent Rooker.
Brandon Woodruff is throwing bullpens twice per week and said Monday that he's in a, quote, really, really good spot, but not sure that he'll be ready for opening day. This is the second time we've heard something like this for Brandon Woodruff, who is recovering from surgery on the anterior capsule in his right shoulder that he had in October of 2023.
I did read that piece from MLB.com. It was like the first time Brandon Woodruff has talked about his recovery from the shoulder surgery at all, I think is the way it sounded. And he said it sounded more like he's not sure he will pitch in the first series because he's not sure if he will have earned that. That was my takeaway from what he was saying. Not that he won't be ready on opening day. His surgeon told him to have a normal off season. He said he feels good. He hasn't pitched he has no idea where his velocity is. He said he's not doing that until he gets to the team facility, which I think is actually, he's reporting like this week is what he said. So he's going to like get in the lab and see what everything looks like and get all the biometrics and all that. But he feels good and he is having a normal off season with the expectation that he will be ready for the start of the season. He's just not sure if he will be pitching on opening day or the first. I think they play in New York the first weekend. So he's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to pitch in New York or, after that. But my read on it was he does expect to be ready for the start of the season. And I'd rather take the flyer on him than Justin Verlander.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not a comparison. I'm bearish about Brandon Woodruff coming off this injury. And I suspect I'll have most of my pitching staff filled out by the time I consider taking him, but it's a lottery ticket given his track record.
Yeah. The ADP in three NFBC January drafts for Woodruff is 232. So at that point in a 12-team league, you can, it has been falling. It was closer to 200 in November and it's actually, come down.
That's actually stunning.
Yeah. And NFBC, you have no IL spots, so it's a little bit tougher. Yeah, maybe he is ready, the first or second week of the season, something like that. But you might want to be more careful and maybe plan to draft Woodruff in a league where you do have an IL spot.
I have him 176th. Maybe I'm not bearish on Brandon Woodruff. I don't know. I feel like I am, but
I'll be honest. I did not expect, when I said surprising, that was not like, oh, that's low. That's way higher than I thought it would be.
Okay. The Rays and Drew Rasmussen avoided arbitration by agreeing to a 2-year, $8 million extension. Rasmussen has pitched really well in his career, regardless of role, starter, reliever. He has had trouble staying healthy the past couple of years, but his ADP over the last month is 251. Roster Resource currently has Rasmussen as the Rays SP6, and there could be value in CBS leagues here because he has RP eligibility. So if he is a starter for the Rays, he'll be a SPARP in head-to-head points leagues. So anything else here on Rasmussen?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to approach him because I'm sure he'll end up making a lot of starts if he's currently slotted as the sixth guy. I don't know. Maybe he'll end up making just a couple of relief appearances in April and that's it. Depending on how things shake out with the rest of the Rays pitching staff. But it's one of those in shallower leagues, like a head-to-head points league where you could take advantage of the RP eligibility, where it's going to be hard to devote that roster spot to him for as long as it might take him to secure a full-time starting job. I think it'll happen eventually, unless Rasmussen himself is the one that gets hurt. But I don't know that he's a high priority draft target for me as long as everyone is healthy, just because I don't trust that I'll hold on to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally hear that. But maybe he's someone you pick up later in the season. Again, like when he's pitched 310 innings in his career, 295 ERA and a 109 whip. So
yeah, the problem is, and this is always a problem with a guy like this who's RP eligible, is his skill set probably fits better in a roto league than a points league. He's not going to get you many quality starts. He's not going to get you a ton of wins because he's not going to pitch deep into games, partially because he plays for the Rays, partially because he has not shown that ability to. So that it's a tough one because the RP eligibility definitely helps. It's just tough for him specifically to take advantage of it.
All right, let's get back into ADP risers. Specifically, we'll get back into fallers a little bit later on. But one name here, and Chris, we talked about Lawrence Butler either last week or a couple of weeks ago. Scott wasn't here, so I want to get Scott's thoughts. Up from pick 79 in November up to 71, which, again, it doesn't sound like a lot. But pick 71 for Lawrence Butler, the reason, I do not know. I think it's Steamer projections came out, and Steamer is a projection system that you can find over on Fangraphs if anybody wants to look into those. Steamer has projected Lawrence Butler to hit 253, 27 home runs, 90 runs scored, 21 steals, and that equates to their outfielder 17 in roto leagues and outfield 18 in head-to-head points leagues. I really like what Butler did, but Man, pick 71, Scott, buy or sell at cost Lawrence Butler.
I'm fine with it. I had to move him up given the enthusiasm I've seen and not wanting to be outpaced on that enthusiasm because I'm very enthusiastic about Lawrence Butler. I've moved him up to, in my roto ranking, 77th. So I'm not far off from 71. And, you know, it's a difference of positional need probably at that point, or how much upside you want to secure at that point in the draft. Whether or not I actually wait as long as 77th to take Lawrence Butler. But just a reminder of what he did when he broke through. Final 3 months of last season, 73 games. He hit 302 with 20 homers, 14 steals, and a 943 OPS. And maybe, as impressive as those numbers are, maybe the most impressive number of all during that stretch is he struck out about 20% of the time. And I believe if you shrink that even more, the numbers look, if you don't start at July 1st, but start at mid-July, the numbers look even more impressive, including the strikeout rate. So the exit velocities were always there for Lawrence Butler. He clearly is an athletic player, and contact issues that held him back in the past, for half a season at least, he seemed to overcome them. And he's young enough to believe that's true growth rather than just something fluky that happened for 3 months. We won't know for sure. I mean,
plus he's playing half his games at Coors Field. Sorry, I got transported from a year ago when we were having these exact same conversations about Nolan Jones. I was about to make that same comparison. The Nolan Jones strikeout rate, while improved last year, was still way higher than 20%. Here's my problem. What did Lawrence Butler do between October, when his ADP in NFC draft was 107, and December, when it's 70? Like, I don't he might have had a good postseason. I can't remember it. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't
how many
remember
drafts
him
actually
doing
happened in October. I mean, a lot of it's just just word of mouth, you know?
It wasn't many. Yeah, it was 22.
Right.
This is a really high price point for a guy who he's a weird prospect because he was like a first baseman up until 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure. Like, you don't think that about Lawrence Butler, but he was like a primary first baseman for a while until the last couple of years. And then his minor league numbers are, they're fine. It's like a lot of 800 OPSs. And then all of a sudden he has these great 3 months. It was really 2 great months. And then September was I can't do a 6th round pick for a guy with that track record. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, like that's fine. Like, I'm not so far off on that it's like an unreasonable, but like, if Christian Yelich is healthy by the start of the season, I'd rather take that risk.
Yeah. I really like the skill set for Lawrence Butler. I remember once the season ended, I was raving, man, I love Lawrence Butler. Can't wait to draft him. But he's going ahead of names that are more proven than him. Like, Luis Robert is on a bad team, but his upside is still higher than Lawrence Butler, I think.
Lawrence Butler's not on a great team.
I have Luis Robert a spot ahead of Lawrence
like
Butler.
Seiya Suzuki, Brian Reynolds, Anthony Santiago. These guys
that's what it came down to for me. For what it's worth, I have Christian Yelich way ahead. I like Christian Yelich is one of the most undervalued players by ADP.
He's 50 spots behind him.
I don't want to get him tied up in this conversation. But for me, when I initially made out my rankings, it was, okay, do I chase the upside of Lawrence Butler or do I play it safe with a Brian Reynolds or a Riley Green, or I actually had Brandon Nimmo in that group too. It turns out Brandon Nimmo's going way later than all of them. But that was the consideration for me. And at first I came down on the side of, okay, I want to play it safer this year. I'm going to go with the safe guys. But the enthusiasm of Lawrence Butler was such that I was forced to reassess that, or else just never get Lawrence Butler. And I think Lawrence Butler could be 30-30 with a solid batting average.
Yeah, obviously you're not expecting that, but that could be the upside for someone with his talent.
When you chase upside, that's you'll consider the upside.
Yeah,
like this is. I mean, we could get into the whole I don't believe in projections things, but I never draft a player with my eye on one singular outcome. I consider the range of outcomes, and the range for Lawrence Butler goes. The high end is very, very high.
Right, but I was just reiterating 30-30 is like the high end of that.
Well, sure.
It's not like the median expectation.
The low end is this is a guy who was sent back to the minors last year.
Right. So that's the floor.
I don't expect that to happen, obviously, but yeah, sure. That's within the range of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean,
more likely for him than Brian Reynolds.
If we're throwing 30-30 out there, we should also throw.
I think 30-30 is more likely than sent to the minors.
I don't know. Maybe.
I just project his numbers out for the second half last year. It was more like 40-30.
It's a dangerous game you're playing, Scott. Let's get into Willson Contreras, who is up from pick 94 to 81. So he has leapfrogged Will Smith of the Dodgers, and he is now going back-to-back with Cal Raleigh. The reason is that Contreras will play first base for the Cardinals in 2025, which gives him a clear playing time advantage, and maybe it could help him stay healthy. Contreras has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, and obviously playing catcher, I think you are more susceptible to suffering injuries. So he's all the way up to 81. He's, going right around Cal Raleigh. He's just behind Salvador Perez. Chris, buy or sell at cost. Willson Contreras.
This is a tough one because he's my number 5 catcher, and he's 6 in ADP?
Yeah, just behind Cal Raleigh. Yep.
I have him a round ahead of Cal Raleigh. It's just I have him 98th, so I guess sell on his overall price. I don't know. I will say, since he got to St. Louis, his per 162 game average is 263, 27 homers, 80 runs, 80 RBI, 8 steals. Actually, I can definitely see it, and to the point of. You're more likely to get hurt catching. When he got hurt last year, he's had a lot of hamstring injuries in his career, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe some knee issues as well. But last year, I think the Cardinals wanted him to get better at framing. So they had him sit forward closer to the batter, and he got hit I think he got hit on the arm with a bat, and it broke his arm. So that injury wouldn't have happened if he was playing first base. Maybe some other injury would have, but
catchers take beating.
I think you're much more likely to get 150 games out of Willson Contreras than almost any other catcher now, and he's a really, really good hitter. He's a viable first baseman as a hitter. So I definitely think I could be talked into him as high as 3rd, honestly.
I'm disappointed that he is going as high as he is, because it feels like a cheat code when you get a good hitting catcher at some other position where he's going to get full time at bats, and a lot less injury risk at first base than catcher. I wanted to comment on your how you rank him what overall, Willson Contreras? 98, and the actual place he's going is 84. This is where I think
I'm about a round and a half lower on every catcher, it looks like. So,
but this is what I was noticing as I was going through and picking out my sleepers, breakouts, and busts for the first round of sleepers, breakouts, and busts. I was initially looking at my overall ranking compared to NFBC and ADP and thinking, oh man, I'm way off on so many guys. But then when I go position by position, didn't feel like I was that far off from the consensus. So a lot of it's just how you value positions as a whole relative to the consensus. And in the heat of a draft, you're not looking at overall ranking as much as what positions do I need at this moment in the draft. So I think it's less important how your overall ranking matches up than how your position by position ranking does in terms of how much you're in line with consensus.
Agreed.
So I just wanted to put that out there. That's also my rationalization.
I'm going to bump him up a little bit to get closer to Salvador Perez and Yainer Diaz, just because I don't think those guys are significantly better than Willson Contreras playing first base.
Yeah. So it sounds like a buy for you, Chris. Scott,
yeah, I think so.
Scott, yay or nay?
I have him 7th at catcher, behind Cal Raleigh and Yainer Diaz. I know Yainer Diaz is really high in NFBC, and I don't know who else I have him behind to get him to 5th. Willson Contreras.
Probably Will Smith, right?
Probably. But I think a lot of that was building in assumptions about how people are going to draft Will Smith and how people are going to draft Willson Contreras. And if those assumptions are wrong and my rankings are leaving me no chance of getting Willson Contreras and causing me to reach on Will Smith, then I probably need to adjust my rankings.
So does that mean you want to draft him?
That means I want to buy him. I want to buy this. I want to fix my rankings so that I'm buying this.
Fair enough. Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll get back into some risers and fallers right after this. Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball. Today, we are comparing ADP risers from November to December over at the NFBC. And let's try and move a little bit faster. I mean, for some of these, I don't know that there's much to say. I mean, we could probably just give like a buy or sell on some of these. But Tommy Edman, not really sure why he's rising. He's up from 204 to 186. I know that he signed a 5-year extension with the Dodgers on November 29th. Maybe it was just people realizing that he was undervalued, because I kind of thought that all along. But in December, he was outfielder 46, Tommy Edman, going just behind Tyler O'Neill and Kerry Carpenter. Buy or sell at cost?
Pretty easy buy for me.
Really? It sounds like I'm the odd man out on Tommy Edman.
I have him ranked in the 150s. So
yeah, I've got him at 150 exactly. 39th outfielder.
I have him 209th. I don't with the way the game has changed in the past couple years with stolen bases increasing and everything else, I don't see a lot of value in a 260 hitting 15 homer 25 to 30 steal guy. Like that just seems so plentiful. Particularly if he's only eligible in the outfield, which sounds like could be the case for Tommy Edman. And furthermore, he's going to bat at the bottom of the Dodgers lineup. Granted, it's the Dodgers lineup, but it's the bottom of the Dodgers lineup. So he's not going to be much help in runs scored. It's really just a decent number of stolen bases and not totally getting buried in batting average and home runs.
I will point out his 162 game pace last season, 88 runs, 88 RBI.
But you don't actually believe a ninth place hitter is going to do that.
Well, I'm not sure he's going to hit 9th. Hai-Sung Kim might be in the lineup. I would guess he's going to hit ahead of him. Yeah, look, I get it, but
even if the lineup turns over, right? Like Ohtani is there, and then
and I think you're
oh, come on.
You're being too negative, because I agree that like a standard Tommy Edman season it's never been like the most exciting thing in the world, but
it was mostly the scarcity of stolen bases that drove his value in fantasy, and that's not a thing anymore.
His ADP used to be like a top 75 player. Now you're getting him, 185.
Yeah.
And we're kind of talking about how the drafts this year, you want to get power early and speed in the middle of the late rounds. Edman kind of feels like the perfect player to do that with.
And he's outfield eligible now only.
Mm-hmm.
There's a decent chance he's triple eligible by the end of April. Or at least double eligible. Like, it depends what we talked about this on Monday's podcast, but it depends on what Tuesday's podcast. This is confusing. It depends on what permutations the Dodgers end up going with, but there are realistic paths to him being the everyday second baseman or the everyday shortstop.
Oh, there is. But right now he's outfield eligible, and it sounds like his most likely primary position is going to be center field. So that's a small matter anyway. If he's triple eligible, he'll still be pretty fringy in my book. I just don't think that profile plays anymore. If he was batting leadoff, it'd be a different story. But whether he hits 7th, 8th, or 9th, I think he's going to get crushed pretty hard in runs and RBI, in addition to not providing much in home runs or batting average. And really, 30 steals doesn't mean what it used to mean, if he gets that many.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it sounds like it's a buy for me and Chris, and it's a sell for Tommy Edman. Let's talk about Isaac Paredes, who is up from 281 to 222, but that number is even higher. If you look at since the Kyle Tucker trade happened, that number is all the way up to 199. So just inside of the top 200 for Isaac Paredes. The reason, obviously, traded from the Cubs over to the Astros. The ballpark is a match made in heaven for his swing, and it's great lineup context for the top half of the lineup where Paredes is going to be batting for the Astros. So, Scott, what do you think here? Buy or sell Paredes just inside the top 200?
I have him well inside the top 200. So I'm buying that he's rising, but I have him 132. I think,
okay. I'm not high enough then.
I think he's going to challenge Alex Bregman's typical stat line in Minute Maid Park, because it's the pull side power, like the way Isaac Paredes with such consistency has those extreme tendencies to the left field foul pole. That's going to play so well with the Crawford boxes. And as much as we saw his value plummet going from Tampa Bay to Chicago with the difference in dimensions of those two parks in that left field corner, we're going to see even more improvement as he heads to Houston with the Crawford boxes.
Love it. Aggressive. Let's just compare him to other third basemen. So I mentioned he's just inside the top 200. Would you rather have Paredes or Alec Bohm?
I'd rather have Paredes.
Okay. Bohm is going 20.
You said, Chris?
Yep.
Bohm is going 20 spots higher right now. What about Paredes versus Eugenio Suarez?
Paredes.
Suarez.
Okay. What about Paredes versus, well, Scott, you mentioned Alex Bregman. Then we got to get all the way up because Bregman's ADP is 137 and Paredes is at 197. So a 60 spot difference in ADP. What do you think?
I mean, I have Bregman higher, which means I also have Bregman higher than ADP. And I think I probably have every infielder higher than ADP. It's one of those where overall ranking is going to be misleading just because you rank certain positions higher or lower entirely. But yeah, I'd rather have Bregman than Paredes.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
Bregman.
Yeah. Bregman's still a free agent. We'll see where he lands. There's been lots of rumors of the Tigers, which would be not so good.
I would take Paredes over Bregman. If
right.
But that also the Red Sox have been rumored. So that
I would definitely take Bregman if that
a lot depends on where he goes. Yes.
Yeah. Last three risers here. I'm just going to quickly ask you buy or sell. Don't want to get too much into it. I want to get to some of the fallers as well. Jordan Romano is up from 380 to 241. He signed a 1-year deal with the Phillies. He could be the favorite for saves. They do typically kind of mix and match there with Rob Thompson as the manager. What do you guys think? Buy or sell at pick 241? Jordan Romano.
That's fine.
I have him higher than that, but I may just have all closers higher than that.
Okay. What about Matt Shaw, who is the Cubs' top prospect? He is up from 502 to 295, but again, since the Kyle Tucker trade, that's all the way up to 222 for Matt Shaw, who is might have a opening day job at third base for the Cubs. Buy or sell Matt Shaw at 222.
I'm just thinking now, there's no way I have all closers higher than NFBC ADP does. So I think I'm just higher on Jordan Romano specifically. But getting to Matt Shaw, I've also moved him up higher than ADP has. I have him at 187, and he's going to be on my breakouts list for this year. Big expectations for Matt Shaw.
Chris?
Push. That's right where I have him.
Okay. And then Michael Conforto is up from 482 to 310. He signed a 1-year deal with the Dodgers. At the least, should be a strong side platoon. And had some great road numbers. Seems like his swing would play pretty well for the Dodgers. What do you think about Conforto 310 as outfielder 72?
I like that he's trending up, but I don't think he's trending up enough. As I said for Paredes and Matt Shaw, I have him about 100 spots higher than this, and Michael Conforto is going to be on my sleepers list for this year.
Very nice. Chris?
I have him right around ADP.
All right. Another push there.
You skipped one name, and maybe we'll save it for this. Are we doing sleepers, breakouts, and busts next week on the pod?
It's a good question.
Because we're doing it on the site, and we don't have to.
I think typically I wait for all 3 rounds of our sleepers, breakouts, and busts to be published before I do that.
Well, Ivan Herrera is my sleeper pick at catcher. Phenomenal quality of contact numbers last year. I think my position on him is he is my plan B for my number 1 catcher and my plan A for my number 2 catcher. I'm really, really excited about Ivan Herrera.
Yeah, he's up from 271 to 241. And with Willson Contreras moving to first base, there's a clear opening there. Pedro Pajes is also there, so they could split time. But even if Ivan Herrera only plays 100 games, I think he could be really good in those 100 games. So I am a buy at that cost, and he's going catcher 19. And I would be all over that as my second catcher as well. Let's get into some of the big fallers in December. And Willy Adames down from pick 67 to pick 77. He signed with the Giants. Maybe he was being a little bit overdrafted early on, coming off a career year with the Brewers. He hit 32 home runs, 21 steals. He was a top 20 player, but it's a downgrade in lineup. It's probably a downgrade in ballpark as well. And that first year of a big contract, new location, all that kind of stuff. What do you guys think? Willy Adames, buy or sell at pick 77?
I guess I'm okay with that. It's shortstop is a difficult position to wrap your head around with an FBC ADP because you have Willy Adames going 77th and you have Bo Bichette going about 77 picks later than that. And to me, they're back to back at shortstop. And it wouldn't at all surprise me if Bo Bichette had the better season heading into last year. That would have been everybody's expectation. Everybody in the world would have expected Bichette to outperform Willy Adames. So Willy Adames feels too high to me relative to other shortstops, or like he's positioned right within the shortstop rankings, but he is not as secure as sort of the difference between him and the Bo Bichettes of the world would have people believe.
Yeah, and Willy Adames is kind of on this like shortstop island in terms of ADP because he's the 10th shortstop, but he's going 26 picks after CJ Abrams, so 2 rounds later, and then 21 picks ahead of Matt McClain, who is the next shortstop being drafted. So he's just kind of in the middle. He's on an island by himself there. Chris, buy or sell Willy Adames, pick 77?
I think
you can't say push. You can't say push.
I might have the opposite answer with Scott, where I have him ranked around 77. He's 82 for me, but he's my shortstop 11. So that's fine. It's push, but he is not a target for me.
Can't say push.
So sell.
Sounds like a sell. Yes, there you go. That's what I was looking for. Let's talk about
what. How is that the opposite answer for me? I don't.
Look. Maybe
he's my 10th shortstop.
Maybe I wasn't entirely listening.
Oh,
okay.
I have Willy Adames as a bust this year. I'm just going to reveal all my sleepers and breakouts and busts on this podcast.
I'm certainly closer to him being a bust than I am him repeating last year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Luis Castillo, who is down from pick 79 to 88. And I think the reason could be trade rumors, skill decline. If you look at his home road splits in 2024, like every other Mariners starter, he was much better at home, Luis Castillo. 3.15 ERA, 108 whip, 23% K- walk rate. And then on the road, 4.25 ERA, 128 whip, 12% K- walk rate. So not that those will just be his numbers if he gets traded, but he might be a little bit worse. So what do you guys think, Luis Castillo at pick 88, buy or sell?
Buy. Like, I'm not particularly excited about Luis Castillo, and maybe the context will change between now and when we do most of our drafts, and I'll lower him, but I have him like 71st, so I'll buy.
That's SP23 off the board, by the way. He's going right around Bailey Ober and Aaron Nola. They're all going in a 7-pick span, basically.
Well, this changes everything because I have Luis Castillo 84th overall right in line, but only 19th but I have him 19th at starting pitcher.
Yeah, I have
So
him around the same place at starting pitcher.
But as I've often said, 15 to 50 is interchangeable to me. So as long as Luis Castillo isn't 51st or 14th, then I'm totally on board.
Okay. Would you guys be looking to fade him if he actually did get traded away from Seattle?
It wouldn't matter to me. He was good in Cincinnati.
It depends, because it's so hard to say with because I've talked about that home road split thing for all of their pitchers and how dramatic those splits are. I don't think you can just look at it and say, okay, well, Luis Castillo is a 4 ERA pitcher away from Seattle or whatever it was. It's never quite that simple. So, like most hitters on the whole hit better in their own home parks than they do on the road. So you would expect pitchers to perform worse on the road, even if they don't play in Seattle. So I don't want to ding him too much for it.
I guess he was more of a ground ball pitcher in Cincinnati, and some of the pitch mix changes he's made in Seattle have made him more of a fly ball pitcher. So it's not totally fair to say he was good in Cincinnati. But I think no matter where he's traded, if he is traded, he would still be in my top 50.
Top 50 starting pitchers.
Right, which is as good as being 15th.
Yes. Thank you for the clarification, Scott, because you kind of scoffed at my question. You threw it away oh, why would you even ask me that? What a dumb question.
I had to double check.
Let's talk about Royce Lewis, who is down from pick 105 to 118. Not entirely sure why this is happening. Maybe just being drafted a little bit too high early on in some of those earlier drafts. People kind of getting scared off by all the injuries that Royce Lewis has suffered so far in his career. He's still just 25 years old. He has not played more than 82 games in a season yet. It still could happen, but it hasn't happened. So what do you guys think here? Royce Lewis at pick 118, going about 20 picks after Junior Caminero and just ahead of Jake Berger.
I'd much rather have Lewis than Jake Berger to begin with. I understand that his overall numbers last year were pretty underwhelming. I think a lot of that was just batting average. It was still a 30 homer, 95 RBI pace. He's played 152 games at the major league level. Despite all the injuries, he's hit 33 homers, 104 RBI, 81 runs, 268 average. I think if he managed to stay healthy, that would be a pretty reasonable expectation for Royce Lewis. So I'm not holding the struggles last year against him too much. I think he's a buy at this price.
Scott?
You know what? He's the 9th ranked third baseman for NFBC ADP, and he's also my 9th ranked third baseman. Excuse me.
6th for me.
And yet I have Royce Lewis ahead of Junior Caminero. So I'm not sure exactly.
Chapman.
I guess
that's probably who it is. Yeah, I would guess.
Yeah. For the most part, I agree with this, though. It's. We could quibble over the numbers, but I think Royce Lewis is landing about the same spot at third base as he is for me, as he is for ADP.
Jack Flaherty is down from pick 125 to 140. And again, the reason here, not entirely sure. He has not signed yet. He's still a free agent. Maybe people kind of digging into the numbers and realizing he was worse with the Dodgers last season. Then he was pretty bad in the postseason as well. He has an extensive injury history. The ADP is 140 as the 40th starting pitcher off the board. Buy or sell on Jack Flaherty here?
At starting pitcher, that's almost exactly where I have him.
Same.
So I'm going to buy it.
I'd buy.
I guess I'm a little higher than 40, but not enough to quibble about. And he'll probably move up to closer where I have him when he signs, because free agent's value is suppressed.
Yeah, this is one though where if something comes up in the medicals, which happened when he got traded to the Yankees and then they backed out, it's going to crash. And I think the contract could tell us something, right? Because
sure,
a 20, what is he, 29, 30?
He wants a 5-year deal. I don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening either.
I don't know. You look at the track record, you look at the season he just had, this kind of guy gets 120. What was
injury history though?
What was the contract that Marcus Stroman signed a year ago? It was 580, right?
No, with the Yankees, I think it was a 2-year deal with a vesting option for the
okay. Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm off base here, but it feels like 485, whatever the actual 100, whatever that feels like it could be within the realm of possibility for Jack Flaherty. So if he signs,
you said 5 though. Originally.
It's one fewer. If he signs but if he signs 127, then I think you have some real concerns about how the people who are smarter than us view him.
Mm-hmm.
Of these 3 possible suitors, where would you want him to land most? The Blue Jays, the Cubs, the Tigers. Those are rumored teams right now.
Tigers by far.
Going back to the Tigers, I think would be the perfect scenario because after he was traded to the Dodgers, he wasn't as good. Mm-hmm. It's worth noting. So I trust him in the hands of the Tigers more than any other team. Plus, there's good pitcher's park.
Also been some talk about him going back to Baltimore, which would be interesting.
I just don't think it's going to happen now that they signed Charlie Morton, but I could be wrong.
I don't disagree with you. That is just such a stupid sentence to be like a reasonably true thing.
Yeah. Next 2 are going to be a double dip here. Ryan Pepiot and Shane Baz. Spoiler alert on Scott's bust list, I believe.
Pepiot is.
Got it. Pepiot down from 156 to 165. Shane Baz down from 159 down to 171. And I think as more people start to research the Rays playing their home games in George Steinbrenner Field, same dimensions as Yankee Stadium. And we spoke about this yesterday. You'll have the Florida heat and humidity. The ball will fly a little bit further. And Tropicana just plays really well for strikeouts and for stuff. So all around just kind of feels like a bad recipe for some Rays pitchers right now. But what do you think of these updated price tags? Ryan Pepiot at 165, Shane Baz just behind at 171.
I dislike even though Pepiot's the bust pick for me, I dislike the cost for Baz more. I feel like the gap between these two should be bigger in terms of where they're going. I don't know if that's people being just totally invested in upside for Baz, who obviously has a lot to prove still. It's not like he came back last year and looked and was dominating like he did prior to Tommy John. Was it Tommy John?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Tommy John. It's not like he came back and he looked exactly the same. So I think there's a lot to sort out here for Baz. Maybe I do need to have him as a bust pick for that reason. But yeah, I guess that's the one I sell more than Pepiot, just looking at the ADP.
The problem with Pepiot is he had this dominant four-seamer last year. Like one of, if not the best whiff rate for a four-seamer for any starter in baseball, 32%. What we know about Tropicana and how, like Nick Pollock talked about on the previous podcast, how it impacts induced vertical break for four-seamers, especially. It seems like leaving Tropicana could be a recipe for disaster for Ryan Pepiot. So I have those two and Taj Bradley in a fairly similar range. I think they're separated by 12 spots in my overall pitcher rankings, but I sell this price as well. They're outside my top 50.
I have 5 more. I'm just going to quickly rattle them off. You give me a buy or sell. Michael Kopech is down from 173 to 185. Just to give you some context, Blake Trinan is going at pick 356. So buy or sell Kopech at 185.
I sell it. I don't think he's going to be the Dodgers closer. And I think those who do are getting a bad deal. They're being bamboozled. I don't know that the Dodgers are going to have a set closer, but I think Blake Trinan enters as the favorite.
I agree with that. And they've also been linked to Tanner Scott all off season. So I just do not want to put anything past the Dodgers the way that they've spent money. So
there was a report that I saw yesterday, maybe from Bob Nightingale, or no, Chris Cotillo from Cotillo. I don't know that Tanner Scott might get $20 million per year.
Yeah.
Which has happened exactly one time for a reliever in the history of Major League Baseball.
Is that Josh Hader?
No, Edwin Diaz is the only one who's eclipsed $20 million on a deal as a reliever. So, like, kudos to Tanner Scott's agent for either getting that offer or getting that in the press. Because Tanner Scott's good. Having been a person who had Tanner Scott on his team, he is way less fun to watch when he's on your team than you think he is.
Yeah. I think the rumor deal is 3 for 60. So we'll see if
that's wild.
Actually gets that. Zach Neto is down from 145 to pick 191. He had right shoulder surgery in early November. He could miss the start of the season. Shoulder is pretty tough. It could sap some of your power. And returning from surgeries like this, it could linger. Not definitely, but it could. What do you guys think about Zach Neto at 191?
Seems a little too cautious to me. It stands to reason that in a 15-team league, you're going to safeguard against injury more because your alternative when waiting out that injury are going to be significantly less. But I have Zach Neto quite a bit higher than this. Let's see, he's 21st at shortstop to do the position ranking. And I have him 14th. So yeah, it's a pretty big difference. Obviously, I'm willing to adjust as more information becomes available in March, but it doesn't sound like he's going to miss a ton of time.
All right. And lastly, I couldn't really understand why this player was dropping. And it's Jackson Jobe. He's down from 262 to 323. And maybe people just thought he was being drafted too early in earlier drafts. The Tigers signed Alex Cobb, but still feels like there's a rotation spot available for Jackson Jobe to start the season. What do you guys think? Buy or sell Jackson Jobe 323?
He has had a lot of trouble staying healthy in his career. I don't know if he's eclipsed 100 innings. He did just eclipse that last year. No, 95. So, like, I think there's some reasonable hesitancy, but I think he's going way too low. I given how excited we get about prospects of Jackson Jobe's caliber, I don't really see why he should be this low. Like, I get that he wasn't super impressive in his MLB debut, but
super small samples too.
Yeah, it's 4 innings and 1 in the like. Okay, he didn't get swinging strikes. He threw like 100 pitches total.
I also was a little disappointed in his minor league work last year. The strikeout rate was down. The walks were up. Neither was good. As good as we'd want them to be from the top pitching prospect in baseball. And then there's the durability question on top of it. That said, 320 is beyond free in most fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I mean,
so that seems too low just from a lottery ticket standpoint. That's all I think Jackson Jobe is this year, is a lottery ticket. Maybe if you're lucky, he'll be somewhere in between Jared Jones and Paul Skeens, probably closer to the Jared Jones end. But that's what you're hoping for, you know. And if it doesn't work out, whatever, you gave up a 250th pick for him. But he's going quite a bit later than that even, and I find that surprising.
Maybe pitchers are just going lower as a whole, but there are some other pretty interesting names going right around him in that 320-ish range. Nestor Cortez, Brian Bayo, Mitch Keller, Merrill Kelly, Kumar Rocker. Some of those names sound kind of interesting.
I think Jackson Jobe's a lot more interesting than
I mean, Kumar Rocker could be pretty good.
Well, yeah, but he's got, I think, even bigger questions about his job, let alone production. Like, we have a much smaller sample size of Kumar Rocker being a high-end pitching prospect, and I think he was arguably less impressive than Jackson Jobe in a bigger sample size last year. I think we know Brian Bayo and Mitch Keller are not difference makers. So yeah, give me Jackson Jobe over those guys.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again on Friday. Bye-bye.